Welcome back to the Deep Dive. This is Building Humans, sponsored by Al Mahaba Foundation and Dar El Kalima Publishing. I have to admit, when I first looked at the stack of research for today, I had a bit of a knee-jerk reaction. I
Yeah.
saw the name on the cover and thought, okay, I know exactly what we're in for.
Oh, really? And what were you expecting?
Well, the name is Maria Montessori. So, my brain went straight to preschool.
Of course.
I'm picturing little wooden blocks, kids learning to button their shirts, maybe some finger painting. I honestly thought we were going to be talking about early childhood development, how to get toddlers to share.
That is the common perception. It was almost a brand at this point. Montessori just means learning through play.
Exactly. But then I started reading the source material you provided, specifically her book, Education in Peace, and I realized I was just completely wrong. This isn't a teaching manual for nursery school.
Yeah.
This reads like a manifesto for the survival of the human species. We aren't talking about blocks here. We're talking about war, the rise of fascism, the fundamental architecture of human society.
It is a manifesto.
Yeah.
And it's so important to set the stage here to understand why the tone is so urgent. This wasn't written in some quiet classroom.
Right.
Maria Montessori was a physician, a scientist living in Italy during the rise of Mussolini. She watched Europe tear itself apart not once, but twice. So when we open Education and Peace, we aren't hearing from a preschool teacher. We're hearing from a doctor who stood up to dictators and diagnosed society with a fatal illness.
And that medical perspective, it changes everything. There's this one question she poses early in the text that just stopped me cold.
Yeah.
She points out that we have experts in everything: military academies, ballistics engineers, strategists for battle. We have a highly developed science of war. But then she asks, do we actually know what peace is?
It's a terrifying question because we all
Right.
assume the answer is yes.
Right. If you'd asked me yesterday, I would have said, sure, peace is when the shooting stops. But the mission of this deep dive is to debunk that definition completely. We're going to explore what Montessori calls the science of peace.
Indeed.
So let's start with that assumption I had. Why isn't the end of a war peace?
To understand that, we have to look at the distinction she makes. It's between what she calls negative peace and positive peace. What we're used to, the signing of a treaty, a ceasefire, that's negative peace.
Negative peace. So it's defined by what's missing.
Exactly. It's just the absence of active combat. But Montessori argues that this is often just the permanent triumph of war.
Wow.
Think about how a war ends. One side usually crushes the other. The victor stands over the loser. The loser is humiliated, stripped of resources, and just seething with resentment. The guns are silent, yes. But is that peace?
No, that's just a pause while the loser plots revenge.
It's a pressure cooker waiting to explode.
I mean, you look at the Treaty of Versailles, we called that peace, but historians pretty much all agree it was just the prologue to World War II.
Precisely. And Montessori uses a metaphor in the text that I find so incredibly vivid. It's almost cinematic. She calls this false peace the palace on the volcano.
I highlighted that section. It's a haunting image.
It is. She asks us to imagine this magnificent palace. It's filled with the absolute best of humanity, art, culture, science, treasures. It looks stable, but it's built on a volcano.
Okay.
Suddenly, a fire breaks out. That fire is war. It just rips through the structure, suffocating the people, burning the art to the ground.
And eventually the fire burns itself out because there's nothing left to consume.
Right. And you're left with cold ash, ruins, and silence.
Yeah.
Now, if you stand in those ruins, it's quiet. There's no more fire. But would you look at a pile of smoking rubble and call it peace?
No, you'd call it a graveyard.
That is Montessori's point. We have been confusing the silence of the ruins with actual peace. We treat peace like this passive thing that just happens when we stop killing each other.
Right. But she argues that real peace, what she calls positive peace, it's a structural reality. It has to be built. It's not just the aftermath of destruction. It's a whole new way of organizing humanity.
And this just brings everything back to her being a doctor. Throughout the text, she doesn't seem to view war as, a political problem. She sees it as a pathology.
She absolutely does. She diagnoses war as a disease. In fact, she compares war directly to the plague.
That's a bold comparison. How did that analogy work?
Well, think about the Middle Ages. When the Black Death swept through Europe, people were terrified. But they didn't understand it.
Right, they thought it was divine wrath or bad air.
Or just destiny. They feared it, they hid from it, but they didn't know how to stop it because they didn't understand the mechanism. They were reacting with superstition, not science.
Okay.
Exactly. The plague was only defeated when scientists stopped shaking in fear and started studying the microbe. the invisible causes. Montessori argues we are in the Middle Ages when it comes to war.
So we see war as this inevitable catastrophe. We shrug and say, well, war is hell, but it's human nature. We treat it like a hurricane we just have to endure.
But she's saying no.
She's saying war is a disease of human society. And just as we have the sophisticated science of war to maximize destruction, we have absolutely nothing comparable for peace. We haven't studied the microbe that causes war. We haven't developed the science of peace.
So if we put on our lab coats and try to find this microbe, where do we even look? Because usually we blame politicians or borders or resources. But reading this, I get the sense she thinks those are just symptoms.
They are symptoms. The root cause, according to Montessori, lies in what she calls the moral schizophrenia of modern man.
Moral schizophrenia. That is a heavy term. What does she mean by that?
It describes this dangerous gap between our technological power and our spiritual maturity. Let's look at the world we've built. She calls it supernature.
Supernature.
Yes. It's this artificial environment humanity has created. We fly higher than eagles. We speak across oceans instantly. We harness the energy of the stars. We've created a world that makes us, effectively, gods.
Technologically, we are giants, no doubt about that.
But spiritually, morally, she argues we are still pygmies. We're stunted. We have these godlike powers, the ability to destroy the entire planet with a few buttons. But our internal operating system is still tribal, aggressive, underdeveloped.
That friction, that's the...
That is the moral schizophrenia.
It's like giving a loaded machine gun to a toddler. The capability just wildly exceeds the maturity.
That is the perfect analogy. And she uses a term for us that is quite graphic. She calls us mutilated men.
Mutilated men. That sticks with you.
It implies we're not fully formed. We're intellectually swollen, but emotionally withered. And the danger is that this supernature has interconnected us all. She argues that humanity has effectively become the single nation.
Okay, I want to dig into that concept, the single nation, because looking at the news, we seem pretty divided. Is she saying we should be a single nation or that we already are one?
She's saying we already are one, functionally. Look at the economy. Look at the internet. There are no isolated tribes anymore.
Right.
A virus in one country shuts down the whole world. A financial crash in New York starves a family in Asia. We are one single organism. But because of our moral schizophrenia, our consciousness hasn't caught up to that reality.
So we're a single body that keeps attacking its own limbs.
We are fighting a civil war against ourselves because we don't realize we're part of the same body. We're living in a global reality with a tribal mindset.
Okay, you've given us the diagnosis, and it is terrifying.
Yeah.
We're mutilated giants suffering from moral schizophrenia in a burning palace. If I'm you, the listener, right now I'm thinking, okay, how do we fix this?
Right.
My brain immediately goes to policy. We need better treaties, a stronger United Nations, better laws.
And Montessori would say, you're applying a Band-Aid to a tumor. Politics deals with the adults. And remember, the adults are the mutilated men.
They're already broken.
They are. You cannot fix the world by simply rearranging the broken pieces.
That is a bleak assessment of our current leadership. So if politics is a dead end, what's the cure?
Education.
Yeah.
But, and I cannot stress this enough, not education as we know it.
Not memorizing dates or passing exams.
No. She is talking about a complete reconstruction of the human spirit. And to do that, you have to go back to the source. You have to go to the child.
This is the pivot point of the whole deep dive. This is where we get to the core of her philosophy, and it's so radically different from just teaching kids to be nice.
It is. She introduces a concept she calls the forgotten citizen.
The forgotten citizen. Who is that?
The child. Look at our cities. Look at our homes. Who are they built for?
Adults. I mean, everything is adult-sized. The stairs, the counters, the whole pace of life.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The child is treated as an inconvenience, a guest in a world not made for them. We repress them. We force them to conform to our pace, our noise, our rigid schedules. We ignore their developmental needs until they're old enough to be productive.
And Montessori says this repression is...
It is the first war.
So the war on the battlefield is just a ripple effect of the war happening in the nursery.
Yes. It creates a battle in the human soul that just festers. And she uses this fascinating biological term here, the spiritual embryo.
I've heard of a physical embryo, obviously, but a spiritual one.
Think about a newborn. Physically, they're born complete.
Yeah.
They have hands, eyes, a heart, but psychologically, they are blank. They're a spiritual embryo. Pure potential waiting to be formed.
Okay.
They absorb their environment completely. Now, that spiritual embryo develops in an environment of repression, of authoritarianism, of lack of respect.
The spirit grows crooked.
It hardens. It becomes deformed. That is how you get a mutilated man. We take this incredible potential for love and connection, and we crush it into a shape that fits our broken society.
This flips the whole power dynamic on its head. Usually, we think adults are the teachers and children are the empty vessels we have to fill with our wisdom.
And Montessori just flips the table on that idea. She calls the child Messiah.
The child messiah, that is a massive title.
It is. She suggests that the child is actually the teacher of the adult. Why? Because the child possesses the natural ability to love and unite that adults have lost.
Right.
You put two toddlers from warring nations in a room. Do they discuss borders? Do they hate each other historically?
No, they play. They communicate without language.
Exactly. They have a natural inclination toward unity. They are the single nation. By nature, adults have to teach them how to hate.
So the science of peace isn't about lecturing kids on definitions.
Not at all. It's about protecting the child's natural development so they don't lose that capacity. It's about building an environment where the spiritual embryo can grow straight and strong.
It sounds like we are. Like we're bonsaiing our children. We prune them and twist them to fit into this palace on the volcano, and then we wonder why they grow up to be aggressive.
That is a very apt image. We are pruning them to fit a sick society, rather than letting them grow into the humans who could heal it.
I want to push back just a little bit here, just to play devil's advocate. This idea of the single nation, that we're all one organism.
Yeah.
It sounds beautiful, but is it real? Or is it just, poetic idealism? Because looking at the world, we seem pretty committed to being divided.
Montessori anticipates that skepticism. She knows it sounds like poetry, so she offers proof. She argues that we are already serving each other every single day in this massive web of cooperation. We just don't see it because we're unconscious of it. She calls this the cosmic task.
The cosmic task, is that like a destiny?
Sort of. It's the idea that every living thing has a job that helps the whole ecosystem, often without knowing it. Bees pollinate flowers while looking for honey. They think they're just eating, but they're actually keeping the entire garden alive.
Okay, so humans have a cosmic task too. What is ours?
She uses two metaphors in the text that I found incredibly moving to illustrate this: the baker and the miner.
Let's unpack those. Start with the baker.
Okay, think about a baker. He wakes up at 3 a.m., he works in the heat. It's exhausting labor. Why does he do it? Maybe to make money, to feed his own kids. But the result of his labor is that hundreds of people he will never meet, strangers, wake up and have bread.
He's feeding the community.
His labor is an act of service, even if his motive is just a paycheck. He's knitting the community together through loaves of bread, whether he intends to or not.
Right.
Now take the miner. This one is even more dramatic, especially for the time she was writing. The miner goes down into the earth. It's dark, dangerous, claustrophobic. He faces the risk of explosions, of being buried alive.
He sacrifices the sunlight.
The fresh air. Why? To bring up coal. And he certainly can't use all that coal himself.
Yeah.
That coal goes to warm the homes of people he doesn't know. It powers trains he'll never ride. It runs factories he'll never see. He is sacrificing his comfort and safety for the survival of the single nation. Montessori says this is love. It's unconscious love, woven into the fabric of our economy.
That is a profound shift in perspective. We usually see the economy as competition, dog eat dog. But she's saying it's actually evidence of our unity.
It is evidence of our interconnectivity. We are dependent on the labor and sacrifice of millions of strangers every day. The coffee you drank this morning, the shirt you're wearing, the microphone you're speaking into hands you will never shake, made these things for you.
We're living the reality of the single nation, but our consciousness hasn't caught up.
We're like the bees, doing the work but not realizing we're keeping the garden alive.
So the science of peace isn't about inventing some new system. It's about waking up to the one that's already here.
Yes. It is about raising our consciousness to match our reality. If a child is raised to understand this, to see the miner and the baker, not just as workers, but as brothers in this cosmic task, then war becomes absurd.
You don't bomb the people who bake your bread.
You don't kill the people who mine your coal. You realize that damaging one part of the organism kills the whole.
It's amazing how she takes this from the highest level of cosmic task right back down to how we treat a 3-year-old.
Because that is where consciousness is formed. If you teach a child to compete, to crush their neighbor, to get the best grade, to see the world as a place of scarcity, you're training them to ignore the cosmic task. You're training them for the palace on the volcano.
But if you protect that spiritual embryo, if you let them develop that natural sense of connection,
Then you're building a human who is capable of positive peace, not just the absence of war, but the active presence of cooperation.
this has really changed how I view the word peace. It's not passive. It's not just sitting around quietly. It's an active scientific discipline, a construction project.
It is the ultimate construction project, Building Humans, as your show is titled.
Exactly. And it's tragic that we've neglected it for so long. We've spent centuries perfecting the art of killing and almost no time perfecting the art of living together.
Which leads to the final question we have to ask ourselves.
Yeah.
If we continue on this path, investing millions in the science of war and pennies in the science of peace, what is the end game?
The burning palace.
The burning palace. Are we preparing our children for a future, or are we just efficiently preparing for our own extinction? Montessori warns us that technology is there. The supernature is ready to destroy us. The only thing standing between us and the abyss is the human spirit, and that spirit is formed in the child.
So the most important work isn't happening in the war rooms or parliaments. It's happening in homes and schools.
It's happening with the forgotten citizen. We need to remember them.
That is a powerful place to land. This has been a deep dive into Education and Peace by Marie Montessori, translated by Dr. Salwa Gatto. It's a text that demands we look at our children and ourselves very differently.
It certainly does. It's a call to action.
Thank you for guiding us through this. It's a lot to process, but it feels so vital.
It was my pleasure.
And thank you to our listeners. We hope this deep dive gave you that aha moment we always look for. Remember, this episode was sponsored by Al Mahaba Foundation and Dar El Kalima Publishing. We'll leave you with the motto that really sums up this vision of the world.
Love for all, service for everyone,